Welcome to Shared Insights, the podcast from BA Insight. My name is Pete Wright, and I am joined today by Sean Coleman, our Chief Customer Officer, and today we're going to talk all about SEO and the fine art of SEO inside your firewall. Sean, thanks for taking the time to educate us a bit.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to do it.
You're in Boston, right?
I'm actually out of Raleigh, North Carolina.
I was just going to say, I hear you open your mouth. You do not sound like a Bostonian.
Nope, definitely not. I've worked with them for many years, so I pull for the Patriots now and again, as long as they're not playing the Panthers. But
there you go. All right, see, that's the spirit. Now I feel like we're on even ground here. Let's talk about SEO, search engine optimization. It's a bit of a sticky concept, right? It has kind of a broad reputation. You do a quick online search for SEO. It doesn't take long to find things like SEO tricks to land you on the first page of Google. Ends up being this wild west for signal competition. How do you take this concept and apply it to intranets and portals? Where this competition for signal looks a little bit different?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think one of the things that people need to recognize. I mean, SEO is a huge topic, and I mean, there's investment being made all around. There's experts that are building whole consulting practices to work with people on optimizing their web page, or to go and find clients and bring them in and make sure that when you go to Google or you go to Bing, your results are there. So there's a huge ecosystem that's built up around that. And I think one of the problems is people think that that's an externally facing problem to be solved, while the concepts and ideas apply equally internally. It's not driving people to your website per se, making sure that Google gets your results in the top 5. It's more of understanding that your internal content and what your people are looking for via your intranet or whatever portal they're going to inside your application. Those things it's equally as important for those to be in the higher results, right? So the document that they're looking for needs to show up in the top 5.
Yeah, there's still that same sort of competition for signal. It's just competition for the right document to rise to the right place at the right time.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's one of those things that needs to be thought of. People need to kind of understand it and know how the kind of the lessons learned from what we'd call external SEO or www SEO, things that are done in the World Wide Web, to be done internally. I mean, one of the great examples that we always talk about is a lot of people go to their intranet and they search for holiday calendar.
Sure.
And they're going to be pretty frustrated if the holiday calendar isn't on the first page of the results. You may find out that someone posted a document talking about holidays and how they impact a project schedule, or did we apply the holiday calendar to here? The question and answer, maybe a discussion that was going on,
or they end up getting the holiday calendar for 2002.
Right, it's a different year or different office, right?
Right,
so maybe they're they get the European holiday calendar. Well, I'm in the U.S. Why in the world would it send me that? Much in the same way, when you go to Google and you look for hotel prices, it's not offering you hotel prices in the country you don't live in.
Right,
because it knows who you are, and it is optimized for this is the person that's asking. This is the information that I have. Here are the tags. So I think the real key is knowing that there's that same level of expectation of when I search for something, it should understand some of who I am. It should understand the documents that it's giving back to me, and there should be some marrying between what we know about those documents and what we know about the people, and how those results are kind of optimized for the engine we're working in. Very much the same way as we talk about SEO in the web, it applies equally to in the internet.
Okay, so it sounds like this could get very complicated very fast, and I say that in the context of this. When we think about SEO, that's something that is owned by the marketing team, the technical marketing team, the developer, like somebody who is actively taking a role to make sure that this website is found, this content is found externally. When you're talking about, I'm immediately going back to this conversation we had with DLA Piper and their massive repository of documents and what they go through to make sure that the right document is found at the right time. How is it that you go about making SEO internally not so complicated or more approachable for end users? I assume they have more of a role in this process as they're submitting documents into their intranet than you would expect from an external context.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the responsibility gets shared, right, and layered across multiple people. But I think that internally, I actually view it as an easier problem to solve, really because the way that businesses operate and the things that they do, they kind of understand their business, right? DLA Piper is a great example. You understand that they're a law firm and they work on these types of cases, and they have these types of lawyers, and they have these types of practice groups. If you take the external SEO and why it's so complicated is because literally there are 1,000,001 categories of websites and content that people are trying to share. So how do you take 1,000,000 things that aren't similar and stack and rank them and return relevant results? That's a big problem. It's why the marketing team owns it. It's why there's lots of people that are making good money on doing that. When you come to an internal organization, it's actually a little bit simpler. Because what you find out is we understand our work product, we understand the outputs of our company, we understand how we work, and we understand that the people that are in here have certain roles and do certain things. The key is taking technology and having it enable your users. So provide them with tips and provide them with tools that make it faster to do the things they need to make the search results. So a really good example of this is, a lot of times it comes down to keywords, right? It comes down to what are the kind of core concepts of this document that allow people to figure out what it's about, and getting those keywords from a user, people will find out is very difficult.
Well,
right?
I was imagine from a consistency standpoint alone, that would be a nightmare.
It is, and one of the things that we found out is that a lot of times people go, well, I'll just put a keyword field when they submit a document. I'll ask them for the keywords, and you get 100,000 varying responses. Some people say, hey, that's a view of a crowdsourced taxonomy. And they'll make the argument that a crowdsourced taxonomy like that is actually more accurate than an inside built taxonomy. I tend to go the other way, that when you spend some time getting your high level taxonomy of a tree of what kind of work output you're doing, what kind of work byproduct you have, and where it structures, and then giving someone a selection base to say what type of document is this. Here's the 7 types that we have. Oh, it's that type. And then you can go even one level further through some tools that we have, our auto classifier specifically, which can actually look inside of the document, and it can pull out keywords, and it can identify concepts and then suggest those as keywords to the end user. A really interesting point on that is what we found is that if you ask someone for keywords and give them a blank field, it's very rare that they actually fill it out. They just, unless it's required. If it's required, they just put junk in it.
Yeah, but they just go into vapor lock. I know that's my experience. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But if you suggest and your suggestions are wrong, they're like 9 times more likely to correct your suggestions than they ever were to fill it out blankly. So they're quickly to go, that's not right. What you just told me, this is what's right, than they are to fill in a blank form. So leading them down the path, making some suggestions, even if they're not 100% right, a lot of times will get you, a large increase in the quality of the keywords that are coming out of your end users.
So can we talk a little bit more about that auto classifier? Because one of the things that is so sort of beautiful about what the BA Insight tools allow you to do is it provides this familiar sort of consumer-centric face on what on what people are doing in this arguably much more complex world of their work. They're used to searching, they're used to comparing, they're used to these things. What are the expectations that you have of users beyond just sort of selecting their tools? Any other sort of tools or traits as they enter data besides selecting the auto classified keywords that you expect of them as they create and submit documents?
No, I mean, and that's the great aspect of the auto classifier, because some people will say they're listening to this and they're going, well, my users, even if you suggest, they're going to view that as a waste of time, or they're just going to try to go by it, or they're going to complain about the time it took. The auto classifier can be as completely light touch or invisible. It can actually auto suggest keywords in the background and slap them to it. So if you say, hey, I can't insert anything into the work stream of law firm's a great example. our lawyers bill time, and any time that they're spent, kind of mucking around with technology or not quite understanding this, they're gonna complain. So we don't want to put new requirements on them. That doesn't mean that you can't get quality metadata, because you can build algorithms and you can build rules that look into it and in the background apply those keywords to the document. Once keywords are applied, either if the user verified, user inputted themselves, or just done in the background, you'll actually notice the more things that you'll find in search, and then the more kind of tuning that will be done. You're providing an ability for your end users to provide feedback of, this was the fourth result, it really should have been the first result. Once you have the keywords that are showing up in there, you'll start identifying some of those things that it really should have gotten tagged as this as well. And that's feedback. That kind of closes the loop. That feeds back into the auto classifier. Someone makes a slight rule change that says, oh, if we see these words or this pattern, tag it also with this criteria, which we know pushes that further up the relevancy chain and pushes it up the list. So what you're really doing is a full kind of closed loop cycle of getting your base keywords originally, and then seeing how those react, and then tweaking your rules on the back end, which then automatically start kind of adjusting the relevancy scales to move the content that you're finding kind of further up that list, and optimizing it for search.
Well, that leads us right into my next question. I mean, we've been talking about it a little bit. My last question around this, the user focus. What do you expect of the users? But you're starting to talk now about what organizations can do to really get started optimizing their own results. What else can they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other key thing is some level of an analytics, right? You need some reporting, you need some knowledge of what your users are doing. BA Insight has a product that we call Smart Analytics, and it instruments. I mean, think about it. We talked about earlier the comparison of SEO in the World Wide Web to SEO behind the firewall. Well, right. Google Analytics for websites, you need an analytics package to find out what people are doing on your intranet to be able to really make sure that what you're throwing out there is making sense.
So what kind of data are you looking at specifically at the document level? I mean, we're not, when I'm looking at my website analytics, it might be, geography and user technology and those sorts of things. What is important to you?
I think what's important here is how they found me, what search they ran, and then what was their patterns after they were provided that result, right? And where did they go? One of the things that you can look at and on the web and Google Analytics, if you're familiar with it, is kind of the path of the user. Where did they come in? What pages did they look at, and where did they leave? Our Smart Analytics package looks at that. What did they search for? What did they find? What did they do with it when they found it? And when did they leave? We can actually look into the things that they're doing with the document. Are they previewing it? Are they downloading it? Did they use some filters or refiners? There's patterns in there that can actually then grade out what we call a search experience. So if you search for a keyword, you looked at the top 2 items, you found the document, you downloaded it, you left. That's an A, right? That's the search result we want. If someone came in, they paged through 4 and 5 pages, they spent 5 minutes looking at the filters, they never downloaded anything, and they kind of just left, well, that's likely a D. They spent a lot of time, did a lot of searches, didn't find what they're looking for. And knowing that you have those users, this user that was searching for this got an A score, this user that was searching for this got a D score. What is there a different in their query patterns? Are they asking for things not the right way? Is there a training possibility? Can you go then teach people, here's a better way to ask the search engine? Or can you go back and say, we don't have keywords or taxonomy that speaks to what they were asking for, so we need to go create that, go back to our auto classifier, have it go find some of this data and populate what they're looking for, because it's just an area we didn't optimize. So having an analytics or having a reporting engine that can show you what people are doing, what their behavior patterns are, what documents are being returned, that really drives you to be able to then figure out where your holes are and what needs to be optimized.
I feel like you've made a pretty good case for the benefits of doing SEO inside sort of in your intranet, inside your portal. But I wonder if you could talk about, if you don't have a specific client example of an organization that has truly adopted SEO internally and has truly made great strides in their users being able to find what they need when they they need it. What does a best-in-class company look like? What are their traits, and how do they stand out in your view?
Best-in-class really depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish with your enterprise search. And we talked to a lot of different organizations. We've worked very closely with a very large pharmaceutical company, and I would consider them best-in-class. The way that they classify their research and development content, the discipline that's in their researchers, a lot of it's driven by regulation, right? They kind of have to, right? When they do a clinical trial, they have to have this kind of information. So information curation in an organization like that kind of naturally lends itself to they're going to be highly optimized data, and they're going to do a really good job, and the users are going to be trained to kind of do that. So that's kind of what a best-in-class regulated environment would look like, making sure that you've got the people that kind of understand and own that taxonomy, that are training the end users on what the requirements are, because a lot of times the requirements are more in depth. But I don't want to kind of disqualify the flip side of the organization, where maybe you're a smaller organization, you've got some knowledge management, right? The answer is you don't need a team of people. You don't need a huge taxonomy. What you need are, kind of short corrections along the way. You need to start with some way to get keywords in the system. You need to then take those keywords and provide them in some type of a structured format, like a taxonomy and a classification. And then you need to kind of sit back, look at what your user's telling you, and react to them. So if you can build a closed loop process that lets you identify a process to get the keywords in there, validate their usage, and then feed that back in, you can do it with one person, and you can do a really good job at it. And in an organization of that size, you're operating in a kind of a best-in-class way. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. It really depends on the business that you're in, the resources that you have to put to it. But you can do a great job with one person. You can do a great job with a huge team of people. I've also seen a huge team of people do a not so great job, right? So it kind of flips that way. But I mean, as long as you kind of have a goal of, our search is something that needs care and feeding, and it doesn't need a lot of care and feeding, but it's not something that it can just kind of magically figure out what your people are going to look for and marry that up with what people are contributing. There's a bit of someone has to bridge that gap. There's great software. BA Insight has some of it that makes that really easy. But it is something that someone needs to take a look at. And as long as you understand that someone needs to take a look at it, and you build a good repetitive business process around it, you will kind of be doing best in class, whatever level and effort that means to your organization.
All right, so let's just say I'm listening to this episode, and I have never given any thought to SEO and straight up SEO findability of my documents. I need to get started. What's the first thing you recommend I do 8 o'clock day one?
I would say the first thing you need to do is get a familiarity with your content, get a familiarity with your users and the process that they go through. Because the big thing is getting users to buy in on, even if you're asking them for a little bit of data, making sure you understand how they're structuring that data, how they're submitting it, what the things you're going to be asking them for, so they understand, even if there is a little bit of a disruption in the current process, that it's going to pay off for them tenfold later, and it's going to benefit the organization. So it's more of a making sure that you understand how data gets in the system, how data gets out of the system, and how users kind of work through it, because then you can kind of map out your data flow and understand where the key points that you need to capture extra data, or you need to enrich the data that you have are. And from there, you can find the right solutions to go do that. Is it automated? Is it manual? Is it, do I need to build a taxonomy first? Do I already have a taxonomy? We've got some partners that do some really great off-the-shelf taxonomies that are great. They can get you 95% of the way there, and you just adjust them to the things that are specific about your business. But until you kind of map out that data flow, it's going to be hard to figure out where to start. You'll kind of be spinning in circles.
So once you dive into this, you map out your data flow. Let's say you adopt a off-the-shelf taxonomy. How long does it take you to start to see results? I mean, is it something that we're expecting weeks for the process to kind of normalize, or is it more immediate?
It's more immediate. One of the you'll see almost instantaneously, if you take an off-the-shelf taxonomy, you put some rules, you go and classify your content, you can put some automated classification in place that runs in a matter of less than a day, and now you've got keywords bubbled up that you didn't have before. And you can reflect those almost instantly in what we call a refinement panel. So we have a utility that works in SharePoint called our Visual Refiners. It's modeled very similar, to something everyone is used to. You go to Amazon and you're searching for something on the left-hand side. If you're searching for a computer, it gives you lots of options. Is this a laptop? Is this a desktop? Is it an AMD? Is it Intel? Right? That's metadata about the document, and an auto classification tool based on a taxonomy can pull that type of metadata out. So now, where before you basically just put in your keyword and you got 400 results. You put in your keyword, you got 400 results, and now you have these kind of familiar terms available to you to say, oh, yeah, I am looking for a marketing document. Let me check that box. And then it's filtered to just marketing documents. Marketing documents are a great example. One of the things you see all the time is the internal marketing departments classify their documents. You look in the bottom right-hand side, and it'll say something. It'll have a little code. MT-9 whatever,
sure.
Right? Data sheet, this dash whatever. Well, a classification tool can look for that pattern and say, well, we know that our marketing department uses a 2-digit code dash a 3-digit code dash a number to classify their documents. If you see that pattern, tag it as a marketing document. So that someone comes in and says, I'm looking for a data sheet on this product, and then they see, oh, marketing documents is a filter. They check that box, they hit apply. They went from 400 results down to 10 results, far faster for them to find what they're looking for in those 10 results than they did in the 400. And you probably did that in a matter of a couple of days.
This has been fantastic. Sean, have I missed anything? Anything you particularly feel like we need to talk about before we sign off?
No, I would just say that kind of tying it back into the beginning. I mean, I would say that, SEO for the web is far more complicated and daunting than SEO for your intranet. Given some of the things that we talked about. So I would just say that if people aren't focusing on it, it's definitely something to look into, and I wouldn't let it intimidate you, because there's some really great tools, tips, and techniques out there to kind of make it effective, make it quick, and make it easy to manage.
Great advice and guidance from Sean Coleman, our Chief Customer Officer at BA Insight. Thank you so much for taking the time today to lead us through this process, Sean.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us and downloading. Don't forget, you can listen to the show anytime over at bainsight.com, or subscribe for free in iTunes or your podcast application of choice. We'll catch you next week on Shared Insights, the podcast from BA Insight.